When I was a little girl, I remember one of the staples of our meals every week was macaroni and tomato. I know, interesting. So it's a macaroni, you add tomato sauce, juice, whole tomatoes, whatever kind of tomatoes you have, and then you put hamburger with it and onions. And as I got older, we always had this. So like once a week, always had it. But it started out because my dad was in college and we couldn't afford macaroni and cheese, so they made their own version. They decided they wanted it healthier, so they added the tomato. So it's kind of like a spaghetti, but then also it's not. Also, I remember having macaroni and cheese with hot dogs, with sausage, with ham, all sorts of different combinations for us to get that extra protein in, to have that. I wanted to find out about macaroni because it's pretty fascinating. So, as I was looking over, I was surprised to find out that the fourth century BC, so 399, 400 BC, they found a tomb that had markings on it. They used to do like the pictures and stuff on the tombs that actually showed macaroni, which is a tubular pasta and cheese sauce on it. Well, obviously they don't know if it's cheese, but they could see that it was like a dinner with the macaroni. So even back then, this dish has been loved across the world for different things. So when I'm talking about pasta, we look at the different countries and how it's in totally different places. There's over 600 types of pasta, and there's more than that in names because some countries call it different things, but we're looking at 1,300 different names for pasta. Pretty fascinating. It's so popular over the world that because it's accessible and it's just been that way in all the different countries. In 1700 BC, we had the Shang Dynasty, which is out of China, and they had their own pasta, and we're not sure if it's like a rice based or a wheat based because they had both, but they had their own. So this pasta is actually made by layering up different layers of the pasta and then cutting it out to the sizes that you need or the shapes that you need or whatever you need, and that's how this pasta was made. It's one of the world's most accessible foods because it grows in so many different climates. Now, some of the different climates, obviously, like I said with the rice in China, it's a little different. Then you look at the Greeks, they have orzo, they have their own little pastas, but their wheat or their grain is different than Italy. Now, Italy uses durum, and I know you probably thought, oh yeah, I've heard that name before, but that is at the time it was very expensive to use, and it only was grown in the one part of the world. So so that's what they used. So as we try to decide where pasta came from, we're assuming it came from Italy because of the tombstone, but then we have China who has their own pasta dish, and so we can't really say for sure. But we do see traces of pasta all over throughout history. We have the Greek god. It's actually their blacksmith god that made the pasta press. So he invented the tools that he needed to make a pasta, to put the pasta dough in that would come out with the pasta. And then later they did the one with the tubes, so it would come out and it would be like the macaroni tube noodle type thing. And then so that was like kind of the history. So then 1600 We have people around the world adding cheeses to it, and we have Italy who has added Parmesan cheese to it, which at the time was very expensive, but it's Italy. And they have this Durham wheat to make the pasta out of. So they have these two things, and they've made this. Then they ship it to different places, or different places ask them for it, buy it, and so it's like very expensive that way too. But the thing that's fascinating about that is that only the high society was able to have the pasta. That they would serve it, they would make it. I mean, the recipes were, they dated back to that time period or before, and so they had these pastas with the recipe with the cheese sauce and that, and then as it kind of matured, it came up with a different thing. So the word macaroni is actually a generic word for tubular. So I didn't know that either. I thought that was kind of fascinating. Macaroni and cheese in Germany and Poland, they actually use it with their smoked Polish dogs. And then if we move over to the United States, we have found a recipe scribbled down by one of Thomas Jefferson's chefs. His name was, let me see if I can find it. His name was, I'll come back to it because I can't remember it right now. Anyway, so he went back there, and Thomas Jefferson said, I've got to have this. I've got to have this macaroni and cheese. I've got to bring it back to the States. So he actually smuggled one of the pasta makers over, and this is out of the Smithsonian information that I'm kind of telling you. And they also were saying how the Yankee Doodle Song was a group of high society people that used to wear their wigs or their hair certain ways. But yeah, they were high society. That was kind of fascinating too. And then his chef was James Herring. So he was asked to please make the macaroni and cheese and come up with a recipe. And then I will post the picture of the recipe on the blog, on the site too. So he had the recipe, and then he brought it back with this pasta machine, so he could make it for the president. At the time, only a high society was enjoying this because of the cheese, because of the pasta. Everything was kind of expensive. Well, in 1937, America was going through the Great Depression, and it was towards the end of it. And this Kraft had come out and introduced these boxes of macaroni and cheese. And they were very inexpensive, 5 cents a serving, or 4 servings for 37 cents, I think is what they figured it out to be. So so it had kind of switched, and instead of being a high society meal, it all of a sudden was starting to feed poverty and those who need help, and also just regular society. And it could feed a family of 6 or 4, depending on the box. It was fresh. You could add fresh meat. The cheese actually has the dairy in it, and all of these components that people thought they were eating healthy, and so they were eating this macaroni and cheese, and they could be getting with their food stamps, 2 boxes of the macaroni and cheese. And even now in the South, some of the recipes of this macaroni and cheese, they've called it macaroni pudding. So if you see macaroni pudding, it may be macaroni and cheese, an old macaroni and cheese recipe for that. This was also utilized in the South a lot, but here's the thing. If you made it from the box and served it from the box, then you could do it Monday through Friday or Saturday. But on Sunday, if you make macaroni and cheese, it has to be a casserole form. I thought that was kind of interesting too. That depending on the day, depends on how you prepare your macaroni and cheese. And in their first year, Kraft had sold 8 million boxes of this macaroni and cheese. It did help a lot of people during the Depression, helped them kind of, and it was interesting at this time because dairy was hard to come by, meat was hard to come by, and so this was one way of them helping society with the meal. And so that's why they had sold so many of them. Other countries have tried, or other companies have tried to bring in the macaroni and cheese, versions, their own little versions, and it's a little different. There are some food establishments too that will make their own macaroni and cheese versions. And then there's also different shapes that it will come in. And so anyway, this macaroni and cheese has been used up and utilized across all the different societies and all the different ways of cooking a meal. It's easy. We have the Easy Mac, which you just have to put in the microwave and you add water, then you stir it, and you heat up the noodles, boil them, and then add the cheese flavoring. Then you have the box. If you're not in such a hurry, if you have more than 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes to wait for those noodles, then you have the box, and that's usually serving a 4 or 6, depending on what size of box you get for that. There's a variety of different ones. I remember seeing the shells. Now they've got different companies like Velveeta, and then they've got the different things like that. But there's only one Kraft macaroni and cheese. So if you consider how easy this is to make and how filling it is, and that was one thing that was recognized during the Depression, is this pasta is a filling pasta. So my kids aren't walking away from the table hungry. It's only 5 cents. I can feed my family for not very much money, and have that all taken care of, so that they're not hungry. So we have all these different options. We have different recipes now. We have lots of variety. We can go to the store and just pick up a box, and we don't have to worry about where the cheese come from, and is it mozzarella cheese, is it cheddar cheese? Because cheddar cheese is what they use now, but originally it was the Parmesan cheese and all of this. So my informative video, I am hoping that you will choose macaroni and cheese over any cup and noodle or any of those that have the MSG stuff in it, because it's more